Thank you very much, Felicita and Sebastian, for organizing this very interesting event, and thank you for inviting us. My name is Giulio Ercolesi. I'm Italian. I'm a member of the board of the European Liberal Forum. Given that this morning I was asked to occupy an empty chair, I will take the opportunity, and so while we are waiting for some of our friends to come upstairs, to say a few things that I was thinking of saying this morning, as Sebastian authorized me to do. I think we are basically facing in these years a typical situation of challenge and response, as it was the scheme that was proposed by British historian Arnold Toynbee, who was an encyclopedic historian who wrote about the history of civilizations. And he said that there are moments in history when, and they always arrive, when civilizations are put in front of challenges they have to give a response to. Sometimes they are not able to respond, and usually they miserably fail. I'm not saying that this must be the situation now, but given that we have to face this problem of far-sightedness versus short-sightedness, I would like to remember what has happened in Britain. Well, talking of Italy would be too easy, and I wouldn't even mention the pitiful history of the last 20 years in my country. I would prefer to think of a more politically, perhaps not only politically serious country, such as Britain. A few months ago, 3 months ago, I think, there were a lot of municipal councils that were re-elected in Britain, and the result of the UK Independence Party, anti-European populist party, was much better than expected. What was the response of the political establishment in Britain? Prime Minister Cameron made a statement, and he said, we received the message loud and clear, and we will take it into account. What does this mean? This means that the political agenda of Britain in the next few months, and possibly in the next European elections, will not be that set by the Conservatives, by Labour, by the Lib Dems. It will be the political agenda set by the UK Independence Party, because the political agenda, Cameron said, will have to be discussed, will be that of this so far almost negligible populist party. This is an example of the lack of far-sightedness of the political system in Europe. This probably has to do with the fact that the political class and the national establishments that are in government or in positions of power today are those who were prepared for the end of history. Those who thought that we would only need capable technocrats, managers, not certainly political leaders. And yet the situation is not that. They talk about a democratic deficit of our institutions. Of course there is a democratic deficit. Of course the European institutions cannot be democratic as they should be. Because if every important decision that has to be taken at the European level is taken behind closed doors by 28 heads of government and state, they produce a compromise a very difficult compromise to achieve, and they say that this is the only possible way we reach the unanimity. What is the result? The result is that both the European Parliament and the state parliaments have only one option: swallow the compromise as it is. Not discuss it, not amend it, just swallow it as it is, because otherwise they take on themselves the responsibility for a huge European crisis. Is this the way democracy works? Obviously it is not. But the way out of this, opposite to what Eurosceptics and anti-Europeans say, has only one definition, one only possible definition. If you want to have at least the common market, if you want to have a voice of Europeans in the world, you have to take a lot of decisions at the European level. Whatever decision you have to have at the European level should be adopted in a democratic way. Unanimity is not a democratic way to adopt solutions. Think of what the economic policies or the foreign policies of Germany or of Italy would be if the only way to take decisions were to put in a room behind closed doors the presidents of the 16 German Länder or of the 20 Italian regions, with their different geopolitical priorities, with their different economic interests, and with their different political majorities. Could there be any political foreign policy decision, economic policy decision with any rationality? Of course, no. But this is the situation of Europe today. So we should have a legitimation of Europe if Europe has to have a say, to have a voice in a global world where, unlike most of our fellow countrymen think, fellow countrymen throughout Europe, I mean, is no longer the West. The world today is a global world. It is no longer the world of Europe as it was until World War I. It is no longer the Western world we were used to until a few decades ago. Nowadays, in the global world, if you want to have a say for Europe, that is half of the half of the Western civilization, you have to have a European voice. Because our countries, the bigger ones, France, Britain, Italy, are exactly half the size of Chongqing. That is one single city that is no longer a poor, underdeveloped city in China. So if we want to have a say in the global world, we have, and this is a problem, I think, also for our American friends. European integration was born in the late 40s and the early 50s, also to an extent as a consequence of a very strong American push. Nowadays, the Western civilization is America plus the 28 dwarfs. Now, the 28 dwarfs are not the Western civilization made of the Atlantic Alliance with two pillars of which American presidents and the American establishment were thinking in the 40s, in the 50s, in the early 60s. There must be very important reasons behind the Atlantic Alliance if it survived Bush and Rumsfeld, but nowadays it is time for us to revitalize it, and in order to revitalize it, we have to have also a European pillar of it. That's more or less what I would have said, with something more that I will spare given the time right now. I would have said this morning. Now, this panel, given that most of the people that were still at lunch have come, and we can start with our panel. This one, of which I have not, is about national political foundations and democracy support. The panelists have been already introduced to you. So I would start, would you like to start in the order that is on the sheet, or you prefer to have you any preference? No preference. So the first is Davor General, the political analyst, head of the Council of Experts of Political Academy, HNS Croatia.
Dear liberal friends, let me, nevertheless, most of participants have spoken in English. Let me use the opportunity now to speak in Slovenian. I live in Croatia, but my mother's language is Slovenian, and I am in very few times in a position to speak with my native language. I hope that there will be no jezikovnega razsodišča in da ne bo nekakšnih velikih pripomb na mojo včasih spakedrano slovenščino. Najprej bi se rad v lastnem imenu in v imenu organizacije, katero zastopam, zahvalil na povabilo. Kot drugo, rad bi se opravičil na nek način, ker sem v tej poziciji dvojno marginalec. Po eni strani sem v marginalni poziciji zaradi svoje lastne pozicije do organizacije, katero predstavljam. Po drugi strani se je organizacija, katero znajdla v kontekstu, ki je zelo pretenciozen glede na stvarne capabilities, stvarne možnosti in resen vpliv te organizacije v hrvaški družbi. Govoriti v kontekstu ob enem, ne vem, s Friedrich Naumann Stiftung je več kot pretenciozno. No, v vsakem primeru govorim v imenu organizacije, ki je del in ki je navezana na Hrvaško narodno stranko. Hrvaška narodna stranka je ena izmed dveh hrvaških parlamentarnih liberalno-demokratskih strankah. Druga hrvaška parlamentarna liberalno-demokratska stranka je Istarski demokratski sabor, regionalna, ampak tudi po vrednotah zelo trdno in jasno definirana liberalno-demokratska stranka. Na Hrvaškem obstajajo še nekatere politične...
Have also a number of other political organizations which are not political parties in the strict sense of the word. They are non-parliamentary parties. And these parties do not have political activists, they do not have their values clearly defined, although they see themselves as liberal parties. But let us leave these marginal entities aside. Anyhow, when it comes to the Croatian democracy, we need to say that regardless of the fact that when it comes to Croatia, I am among those who strongly advocate party politics, party principles in the political life. However, parties are seen as two systems in Croatia which, within our democracy, function. Parties should, in fact, perform three main functions, three main tasks. Firstly, to stand at elections, to run for elections. Based on this, they should constitute the state based on election results. Then another important role which they perform as political parties is to recruit talents so that they perform public duties. These individuals are then trained and they are involved in professional political life. In this way, talented individuals are promoted and they are public officials. So bottom up. And in line with powers and competencies they have. And thirdly, performed by political parties, the task which they have, if we have a serious democracy, it would be to build national political culture, to resolve certain disputes within the society, to elaborate political philosophies, to cooperate with intellectuals who share similar views, who have similar mentality to political parties, and in this way, we should also build a civil society within the state. As I have said, in Croatia, there are two systems which are deficient. One of them being political parties. They regularly stand at elections, and based on election results, they construct and build state institutions, and the majority of them see the state as something which is divided among after election results, and they're not interested in policies and how they could benefit the state, and also how to manage these affairs. This is not within their scope. And they see the state as their prey. And then there is also another problem in Croatia, civil society organizations, which are not well developed. As we were taught in the 1980s or beginning of 1990s by Ralph Dahrendorf, they are extremely weak. We have weak civil society organizations. In Croatia, we don't have grass-level structures, grassroots structures. It has not been developing as an area of serious reflection, friendly cooperation among individuals who share similar interests. As for the structure of civil society in Croatia, the structure is not solid, and civil society environment in Croatia, consequently, has been built with the aid of foreign charities or organizations which funded the setup of civil society organizations. This, however, ended in 2000 or 2003. And from there we have problems. At the same time, civil society organizations have been captured by politicians who haven't been able to implement their ambitions, and these politicians were not able to apply political criteria when it comes to evaluation of their political role and status. In other words, they have not been able to obtain sufficient number of votes, and they were not able to attain the electoral threshold, and they were not able to impact political decision making. I have been very fortunate enough, although I have never been a member of any political party. I speak, however, on behalf of the organization which is affiliated with the Croatia's People's Party. The reason why I am so fortunate and that I am very pleased when I receive any invitation of the Croatian People's Party to attend any event, and also I cooperate with them. Why? With the exception of the Istrian Democratic Assembly, which is also a very friendly party, And I would be very pleased that there would be merger between these two parties I have mentioned. So these two parties, on the other hand, perceive and identify problems Croatian political parties have. And on the other hand, these parties, both parties, know very well what are complexities when it comes to establishing civil society organizations in Croatia. And the organization on behalf of which I'm addressing you today is in fact the only foundation in Croatia which consistently, in a long-term perspective, deals with at least 2 out of 3 functions and roles of political parties I highlighted at the beginning. Namely, it seriously deals with training of its membership base. And within the political academy of the Croatian People's Party, there are 2 separate divisions involved in training. The first division of the academy educates elected deputies in local, national and regional councils and assemblies throughout the term of office. And of course, the focus is on the end and beginning of the term. At that time, an attempt is made to provide assistance to these individuals so they learn all the important skills which are needed for their operations and to perform their role as deputies at different levels of government. As far as I know, the party also has good connections with important and renowned foreign organizations and institutions. It is also a very relevant entity when it comes to today's political elite. So the leadership of both
Friedrich Naumann Stiftungove. Pardon, to je bilo opozorilo, da ne končam. That was, oh, sorry. I'll finish immediately. There is still one important part of,
there is also one important aspect which needs to be highlighted when it comes to the political academy. It has a long-term perspective, and it should be some sort of liberal think tank, which should then focus on the third part of political functions and roles that should be performed by political parties. Individuals within the political academy are, in fact, political party members, and one happens to be the party president at the present moment. Yet she's a professor as well, a professor in political science and sociology. And then there are also individuals, including me, who are involved in human rights issues, economic policies issues, minority policies. And we try to operate as some sort of liberal think tank to come up with political topics which cannot be raised by the political party itself, and other political parties also avoid these issues. However, in Croatia, these issues are also not dealt with by NGOs. I'm primarily referring to the issues such as strategic policy when it comes to migration, emigration, then asylum policies. minority protection, as well as other measures. I would like to apologize for abusing the time frame if I have done so. Thank you very much for your attention and for giving me the opportunity to be able to speak in the context and that you have given me such an important position, although I do not deserve it at present.
No, it's not you that had to apologize. I should have mentioned before that the organizers told me that the presentations should last about 12 minutes, but you were very well inside the time. I'm sorry if I interrupted you without saying this before. Now the floor is to Peter Altmix, who is a researcher of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, that is the foundation of the German liberals. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and indeed, thank you for inviting me here to this wonderful conference. You still see me smiling after 2 weeks of the disaster happened in Germany. You know that first time ever since in the existence of the Federal Republic of Germany, the Liberal Party is not represented in the parliament. So our foundation remains as an organized think tank for liberal views. So we are a little bit under pressure, and I think within the next 4 or 5 months we will see what I have to do and what the reactions are or the challenges that we have to face in Germany. First of all, I have to tell you a little bit about the framework under we are operating. Political foundations in Germany. The first important stuff is we are independently, autonomously, and we have intellectual freedom. So this is a kind of our mission statement. The second one is we encourage citizens to participate in politics. Our founder, Friedrich Naumann, he had the idea of the Staatsbürgerschule, of the citizens' school. And so this is our core task, and we do it we really enjoy to do this task. The third very important condition for political foundations to operate in Germany, we have a Political Parties Act. We have some judgments by the Federal Constitutional Court, and we have to maintain strict legal and factual independence from the political parties to which we are affiliated. So this is controlled, and we are under close supervision. What does it mean? We as a political foundation may not intervene in the competition between the political parties or solicit donations for them. Especially concerning solicit donations for them, we are under close supervision by some socialist and social democrat newspapers who very intensively investigate the financial relations between us and our partners, and sometimes they publish it in the media in order to hurt us. So we know that we have to be very careful about that and to keep this in mind. The second one, our educational activities are open for everyone, so all citizens have the right to participate in our seminars and events. The third one, there is a joint declaration on government financing of political foundations. So this is the basic ground we are standing on. And the last one, the basis of our funding is the average of the last 4 results of the federal election of the associated party. So our associated party is the FDP, the Liberal Party of Germany. And the result, which is now out of the calculation, was a result from 1998. We had about 6.2%. And now we have, in the last election 2 weeks ago, we had a vote of 4.8%. So the difference between the result, which is going out of the calculation and replaced by the new one, is not so big. But the result of 2005 has been the result of 2002 has been 7.4. So if the Liberal Party again will have such a destructive result than 2 weeks ago, we'll have a problem of our funding base. So the first budget cuts we will face lately in 2015, and to some extent we have to save costs. The legal framework of public financing, we have extensively reporting requirements, okay, and we are also controlled by outside audits, audited by the federal ministries in accordance with the conditions for approval, budget regulation. We are also, the tax office is supervising us, controlling us, auditing, and we have the third part of it is independent auditors, in part voluntarily, in part in accordance with the conditions for approval. So we have a consistent monitoring of compliance with provision of the appropriations law and the use of funds for the intended purposes. But this does not, there's an additional a requirement or a control of our quality in selected areas. For example, 3 or 4 years ago, the budget office controlled our education campaign. They did not only control whether we spent the funds correctly, they controlled the quality of our campaign. For example, do we reach the respected target groups? Do we reach our goals? Did we build up relations with educational stakeholders? So the goals and the mission we first stated when we were starting the education campaign from 2005 to 2007, where lately, 1, 2, 3 years later, were controlled whether we reached these control. This was a quality control. So it's a little bit different. The overall structure of the Naumann Foundation, only the three, and at the bottom, the Principles and Research Division that I'm belonging to, Liberal Institute, and the Archive in Gummersbach. The second important division is the Political Education and Scholarship. They are doing seminars, conferences, events, and the third important division is International Politics Division. They are doing political consulting abroad. These three highlighted divisions are the operational units. The rest is supportive. I only want to focus on 2 decisions in order to make my presentation short and in time. The first one is International Politics Division. I think this is also very important for you. We are working in 70 countries, 7 regional and 40 project offices. You can find all the locations where we're operating on our website, and we have also a brochure about the International Politics Division in English. Of course, we have main partners, liberal partners, plus network, think tanks, and non-government organizations. And from time to time, we check whether these parties are still liberal. This changes over time. So, the basis is a foreign strategy of the FNF, the mission for the international policy work. So, and this is our main goal, our mission in the International Politics Department. We are trying to give our partners political knowledge and skills. We're trying to allow them we will contribute to strengthening political parties and support the implementation of liberal policies. The National Politics Department is not only doing political consulting abroad, they also have a small array of publications. Of course, political reports on current events, background papers, very important. Usually in the media, you won't receive background information on a liberal view about some developments are happening abroad. So the policy papers from the regions, and then of course the international views of the Naumann Foundation. And these 4 provide in-depth information and, for example, the background of the Arabic Spring. very important, and we won't get such information in the overall German media from a liberal view. Regarding to my division, I'm working for the Liberal Institute, which is of the division Archive and Principles and Research Division. The Liberal Institute is doing mainly publications, of course. Tomorrow I will present a publication of us, Economic Freedom Network, in depth. So we, the Liberal Institute, is the only genuine think tank within a political foundation in Germany. So our position is a little bit different from the think tank divisions inside the other political foundations. For example, Ebert Foundation, Adenauer Foundation, the conservative ones, or Bell Foundation, the green ones. So we have a genuine think tank function. We are producing brochures, omnibus volumes, and some leaflets. We are trying to get into newspaper and magazine articles. This is one of the problems we are facing now. Because we don't have the Liberal Party anymore in the federal parliament, it's more and more crucial for us to get into newspapers, to get in liberal view into magazine articles, etc. So this will be a big challenge. Regarding to new social media and internet, etc., short videos, etc., are more and more important. You can convince and reach more and more citizens with short videos. A very successful tool we raised in 2010 is our blog, Thinking About Freedom, Freiheit Denken. We had about 900,000 hits totally, so this is overall an average of 662 per day. And the second last one, the agenda setting, what we are doing, the publications. Yes, I'm ready right now, immediately. For example, in our publications, we have first in Germany fundamental criticism of the fiat money system. Others usually don't criticize this. The colloquia we only usually do to create publications. Conference is only to a small extent. This is not our main task. Well, and all information you can receive under www.freiheit.org. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Even in this not very happy time for the Naumann Foundation because of the sort of the German liberals, I think that there are many liberals, not only in Eastern and Central Europe and not only in North Africa, that have some reasons for being very grateful for what your organization has done for decades, as it is the case also of other of our members. Now the floor is to Rain Rosimannus, Director of Liberalismi Academia of Estonia.
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. I'm in terrible situation because you all had a nice lunch, and the perfectly normal physiological reaction to take a little nap is arriving about right now. But I try to do my presentation with a melodic and a nice voice. I believe that all think tanks seek to influence politics, either on decision makers or at the level of general public, or both, just as parties too. The difference possibly between the think tanks and parties is that think tanks usually see parties as tanks without much think, and parties usually see think tanks as too much think and not enough decisive tank power and action. I have noticed in the For Liberty EU network, a member of which the Academy of Liberalism is, that there is a tendency that the stronger think tanks are in the countries where there are weak liberal parties or no liberal parties at all. Estonia is the opposite case. We are one of 2 countries in the European Union, besides Netherlands, which have liberal prime ministers. So I have to say that oh, it's not working. I have to say that this that the most influential think tank in Estonia is not an academy of liberalism, but the Reform Party. Classical Liberal Reform Party was established in 1994, and during these 19 years of existence, they were in opposition only 3 years. And the Reform Party has been in Prime Minister's office 8 years for now, in a row. So I can say that liberalism is a political mainstream in Estonia. And this is a political mainstream in Estonia in a sense also that the major opposition party, the Centre Party, identifies itself as a social liberal and as a member of ALDE in the European level. So almost like in Netherlands, where there is VVD and D66, we have the Reform Party and the Centre Party. So then more than 50% of the voters usually vote in national elections for liberals. As a result, there is really little public demand for another liberal think tank in Estonia. Nevertheless, in 2006, some leading members of the Reform Party decided to establish Academy of Liberalism, partly as a reaction to the party's Reform Party development towards more pragmatic catch-all approach. And partly because Naumann Foundation closed its office in Estonia in 2004, and partly for creating a framework for retired politicians to use their intellectual power for common liberal good. I will not tell you in detail about what Academy of Liberalism does, because the essence and activities of the political foundations tend to be rather similar. We have Youth Academy, we organize public lectures, we do sort of crowdsourcing events, great international conferences. We celebrate the Day of Liberalism every year. We give award of Liberal of the Year every year, etc., etc. We publish books, Estonian ones, liberal classics translated into Estonian, etc., etc. Instead, I will run to another topic I was asked to tell about by Sebastian, that we actually tried to adopt a law on political foundations in Estonia. As I said, in 2004, Naumann office was closed in Estonia, but in previous 10 years, the old German political foundations, Naumann, Adenauer, Ebert, were very active in Estonia and supported our development towards transition towards a multi-party system in Estonia, and we are really thankful for Naumann for all the help and support that they gave us and still give. For 2008, I was convinced that we should try to do something like in Germany, to establish political foundations, German type. And with Naumann's support, we had a seminar analyzing all the aspects of the German system. And as I was a member of parliament, then I started to lobby other parties to support the idea. And actually, the Reform Party put the idea into its 2011 electoral platform. In light wording, it promised to create institutional framework to support democracy development and Eastern neighborhood policy efforts. The idea was that besides domestic think tank functions, Estonia's own think tanks would take some responsibilities for enhancing democracy and democratic multi-party development in European Union Eastern neighborhood countries, Moldova, Ukraine, Georgia, as German foundations had taken in Estonia earlier. Reform Party won the elections and the goal of creating this institutional framework for development democracy was also fixed in coalition treaty. And then the public implementation process began. In formal technical sense, it was extremely correctly held. Ministry of Justice announced about the intention of drafting a law on political foundations. There is an obligation in Estonia to announce about intentions to start major new laws or amendments. Then the ministry prepared 60 pages analysis about foundations in Germany, in United States, and put together a list of alternatives about what model to choose before drafting the law. All the general secretaries of all parties were constantly sitting together discussing the choices on consensus basis, and they decided that the Estonian choice for the political foundations model will be no draft separate law on foundations, but to add amendments to the party law. Foundations should be NGOs founded by the party. Every party elected into parliament can create one official political foundation. The goals of the foundations have to be fixed in charter, and they should be limited to promoting democratic civic education, research, and international cooperation. So no party political campaigning is allowed in any form. State financing was intentioned to establish for foundations which were themselves established according to the law principles. Private individual donations were meant to allow. Donations from corporations were not allowed. Additionally, donations from EU, NATO, and EFTA countries, public budgets, and from organizations with similar goals as political foundations were allowed, but these donor organizations should be registered in Ministry of Interior Affairs and be published on the website of Ministry. And state finance for foundations was mentioned to be available for parties that are currently in parliament only. And important principle that state finance does not depend on seats, votes, or votes won, but is equal for all parliamentary party foundations. This was the only way to convince smaller parties to support the idea, because parties' state financing depends on percentage of votes already in Estonia. And strict rules and public control, the same rules as we are for parties, should be applied. And party board members are not allowed to be members of the foundation's board. I will not go more in detail here, but I have a translation of the draft law and the choice list we had, so if anybody is interested, I can give a copy to you. Despite of this correct formal approach, we failed, because the timing is everything in politics. When foundations were established in Germany, I believe that there was a consensus and common understanding that there is a deficit of democracy and the multi-party system should be established. But in Estonia, this was not the case, because we were developed in a way that in 2011 we had 4 strong parties in parliament, and the public sentiment was just the opposite, that there are the parties are already too strong, and they have already a lot of power, although there are 4 of them. And the sentiment that the parties are not a part of a solution, but a part of a problem. The multi-party system was under attack at this time. We were discussing this draft law itself. And this was probably the sentiment because of the late outburst of the society's hidden frustration from the economic crisis and the austerity measures we have taken from 2009 already, and partly because of some scandals with party finance which happened at the same time. And there was another crucial miscalculation in timing that mattered. Parliamentary parties decided to put money into state budgets for foundations before there was a law on foundations. And because of this 900,000 euros for parties, the public was understanding that this is even more money for strong established parliamentary parties instead of putting this money for needed groups in time of recovery. And of course, all public went mad. Nobody was listening for rational arguments anymore, and we had to put the draft law aside. So, if you want to do better than we did, just prepare the public opinion carefully. Public will probably be more positive and understanding when the reasoning comes from respected opinion leaders with no party ties or from minority political groups. And it will help if the outsiders will win from this system too. And first adopt the law and don't be too greedy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The floor is to Frank van Meel, the director of the Hans van Mierlo Foundation, the foundation connected to the Dutch D66 party, one of the founding members or member organizations of the European Liberal Forum.
Thank you, Giulio. Thank you for giving me the floor. And I totally agree with the previous speaker that, of course, it is of vital importance that there is public funding for political foundations. Sebastian had asked me to prepare a speech on how we work and how we strive for support of democracy and all. But having heard the previous contributions, I'm not going to do that. So I'm not going to give this speech because I think we have heard very many, very inspiring talks about how political foundations and think tanks all work to strive for civil society and political systems that contribute to our values and whatnot. So that's not what I'm going to do. I'm just going to actually give you some remarks on what I think we've been talking about today. And so if you take a look at the subtitle of today's session, Mobilizing the Citizens and Raising Political Culture, that's what we're talking about today. And I think political foundations and think tanks are instrumental in this. And it's been said before this morning, I think by you, Robert, and by others as well. And I would like to stress this because I think no matter how important it is to have public funding for this kind of work, it is even more important to always remember that politics is us, and it's not us professionals or over interested citizens. It's everybody. It's everybody living here. Politics is us. And that is something that we as political foundations and think tanks must always work on, trying to strengthen that realization. And in our work, in the Netherlands for the Formule Stichting, I always remind myself that political parties, in essence, at least by Dutch law, are what with a beautiful Dutch word is called Vereniging, or in German, Vereinigung. And I've never really found a proper English word that translates it with all the connotations that it has, because I was talking about it over lunch. Somebody proposed coalition of interests. You might say syndicate maybe, or a union, which I think is the literal translation. But all this has connotations in English that don't really serve the purpose. Whereas Vereinigung in German has the connotation of just people uniting themselves around a common goal. And in the case of political parties, people are uniting themselves around a common view of the world, a common political identity. And if you look at political parties like that, you immediately know that politics is something completely different than government. It's something completely different than policy. It also is something, at least in my optimistic and perhaps somewhat naive mind, something really different from strategy or games or tactics. Politics, to me, is looking at the world, trying to make a coherent idea of what you think is fair, of what the role between the state and the individual should be, what the role between individual and community should be like, and then from that on, organize yourself, unite yourself with like-minded people and try and influence society, and most often try and influence government. And that is what I think, or what I would like to stress about today for everybody in the audience. If you take something home with you, and my benchmark is just, the birthday party. Tomorrow you're at a birthday party, what do you talk about? Because everything individuals do, what they do, it matters. You can go to a birthday party, you can talk about yesterday's movie on the TV, you can talk about all these dirty politicians just filling their pockets, or you can talk about how to make a difference. What are you going to do about it? Because that is what I think is really always very soothing and comforting for me, is that political culture, in the subtitle, Raising Political Culture. Political culture is the result of actions of individuals. And that's something what I found really also refreshing, and I was really glad to hear about that this morning, that all these organizations, the way they presented themselves, this is actually what they are doing. For everything that's been said, with all their own insights and all their own techniques and all their own methods, that's what they're doing. And so no matter what you do, as a foundation or a think tank, I'm convinced of the fact that you must be activating. Even because that's what we do at the Formule Foundation also, that even if you are working on a very fundamental publication, for us, we've been working on a liberal democratic view on the relations between states and markets and people. Very fundamental, very highbrow, very philosophical. Lots of people thought it was way too difficult, but we were always thinking, is this gonna activate people? Is this gonna try and help people? And at first it didn't. But then we persevered, and we started talking with municipal politicians of D66 and say, hey, how is this gonna work for you or not? And it wasn't so much a matter of really the content of it, but more how we presented it. And the great thing is, for instance, that after 5 years of working on it, the D66 group in the Municipal Council of the city of Rotterdam voted against a proposal to, with public money, build a whole new giant megalomania football stadium for the football club of Feyenoord. And everybody knew it was going to be public debt for private profits. And something we started 5 years ago as a very theoretical exercise then ended up being very useful and actually saved the taxpayers 160 million euros. So not bad. So whatever you do, I think that's what we always, all of us should take home with us. We should activate and try to be useful for politicians that do not have the motivation or the interests or the fascination or even the ability to do the things that we do. And that is not primarily about funds. It's about having an idea. It's about having energy. It's about building bridges. It's about actually what we've been hearing today all along. And I think that is a lot more important than all the stuff that I could have said about our mission and our methods and how we work with volunteers. And if you're interested in that, just come and join me afterwards and we'll talk about that. But so I just would like to say that I'm really honored to be part of this group and to be part of a, family of liberals working for this. People like you working in it in conditions way more difficult than I'm used to in neat and tidy and easy Netherlands with our traditions and context, whereas you are all fighting uphill battles, and it's really, I take that home with me because it's really inspiring. So thank you, and I hope that I have been able to give you some inspiration also.
Thank you very much, Frank, for this inspiring speech that has somehow given a sense to all what we are doing today. Now, the time is extremely limited. I would just put a question to all of you, if I can, and it is this. Given that we have to raise political culture throughout Europe, given that the challenges that we have to face are those that more or less every one of us know. I was mentioning them in my introduction. Do you think that one of the biggest challenges that we have now is to reach a situation such as that they enjoy in the United States now for a couple of centuries, maybe at least after the Civil War, so a little bit less. That is a union based upon a civic identity rather than on ancestral heritage that cannot integrate other people as we primarily should do today, as they have been able to do so far. Integrating people means that you have to build a common identity that is friendly also for those who do not share the same heritage that we share in each of our countries. That is, building a common union upon what we want to do in the future as a selection of what we think is best in our common constitutional heritage. Do you think that this is probably the most important challenge that we have to face and the most important task that Europeans are facing in order to continue to give their contribution to the liberal civilization? This is my question, and if the audience have other questions.
So my question is this one, especially to Mr. Van Mil. I don't know if this question is also applicable to Mr. Rosimannus, because you say that the political situation in your country is very similar from one point of view, in the sense that you have two big, successful liberal parties, but they are in different position toward the government, because one is in government and the other one is in opposition. So from that point of view, the situation of your country is the same. What I'm asking is this one, especially to the Dutch speaker, is the presence of different political foundations linked to different political parties. That one is in opposition and one is in government, but they share the same political culture. Does this situation help the relation between the two parties in the sense that are the relations between political foundations more easy to be performed than between the two parties? Because they do not have to speak about the government or the opposition. They just have to speak about culture and citizen initiatives and so on. And I don't know if this question, if it's clear, is applicable also to the Estonian case, because I don't know, I didn't understand so well if the political foundations there are linked to parties, but it seems yes, they are linked. So it's the presence of political foundations help, does the presence of political foundation help the relations also between the two different political parties that belongs to the liberal tradition?
Maybe we collect the other questions. There was another there.
No, okay. I can be brief. I don't think they do.
Thank you. Malcolm Byrne is my name. I'm from Ireland. If I've one criticism of the organisation today is that there's been a lot of talking from the top table, and there hasn't been an awful lot of interaction. I will compliment you, Chair, on your timekeeping. And I've been somewhat disappointed, and I think Frank touched on it. If the theme here is about mobilising the citizen, and we've listened to all of the speeches that we've had so far today, most of them have been about structures and about policies and about how we formulate policy and how we come about funding. Could the speakers give very practical examples of how they have engaged with the citizen, not political activists, not those who are deeply engaged in the political process, to encourage them to become involved with the political process and to share their views about the political process?
Other questions? So we can, please.
For example, we did some mobilization procedures during the education campaign. We published special learning material and distributed in schools. We were targeting and had good contact to stakeholder groups like parents, organizations, and representatives from teachers' organizations. So because we mobilize those potential, and we are very small in comparison with the other big foundations, we are a small foundation. But we made it to reach a lot of people during the education campaign, and that's why we could transport our liberal views in education. So this is a kind of a mobilizing success, from my point of view.
I think mobilizing the citizens isn't a linear process. It's not something that very naturally derives from the content matter of what political foundations are on a day-to-day basis are concerned with. But I do think that in our day-to-day basis and the way that we go about our business, we need to have the mobilizing effect in the end of it all as one of our goals. So that's how we've been working at it. It's really hard if you're a think tank and you're working on, well, like I said, like a very fundamental publication on the relations between states and markets. It's very hard to reach a very wide audience. But through the different stages, in, for instance, the example that I gave, in the end of it all, it had a mobilizing effect because, well, you might imagine that the decision for building a new football stadium for a club as great as Feyenoord had a great mobilizing effect. So it's not direct, it's not linear.
I was always struck while attending meetings organized by you and by your party how effective you are in mobilizing civil society in comparison with other countries, especially with other Western countries. Any other question?
I can just answer to your first question very briefly. Yeah, I do believe in deepening the political integration of European Union, but I do not believe in Homo Europicus, creation of European nationality, and I don't think we have to put this kind of target. We have a experience of Homo Sovieticus, and I think that the differences and are asset for the European Union, and let's integrate it politically and as an economic entity market, but let the nationalities as an asset.
I didn't hear anybody claim this right now.
But it was the question about what you call it, a union?
Yes.
Maybe
The civic identity.
Oh, you're...
Yes, yes.
Maybe it is good to say that we liberal Democrats have the certain advantage towards others' ideologies or towards other political parties when we are talking about integration because of several reasons. One reason is the fact that we are rationalists. The second reason is the fact that we are individualists. And the third important reason is the fact that we are progressive parties. Or we are progressive points of view. We are in a position to think about further processes, to think about those processes in a rational way, without the heritage of either those moral stories, either the heritage of not a very easy history. So I think that when we are talking about Europe, we are talking about maneuver space for liberal politics.
Well, I fully agree, and yes.
As the non-European in the room, I feel myself entitled to comment, right? It seems to me that this interplay between citizenship and national identity, if I can draw that distinction in that manner, is really telling, and it's really compelling in precisely a European context. Because this morning we've heard about EU citizenship. Luis has mentioned the ability someday in the future to vote inter-border, Portuguese voter voting for a German liberal Democrat for the European Parliament. Estonia's experience is so much about national liberation, and yet we also find these days the challenges coming from the far right in terms of nationalism in rather primitive ways. So it seems to me that the liberal push in Europe is both to respect national identity, certainly, but to fight against the more extreme and primitive versions of nationalism, which it seems to me promotes that type of European identity. And I think liberal parties and maybe liberalism is somewhere in there and trying to steer through that and being pushed or pulled in respect to what you confront. And I think that to me is a very central thematic and very important policy area for exploration at the European level, precisely among the foundations and with the LF. If I can comment on that notion. Thanks.
So would like to Felicita? No.
I believe that this question is really thought-provoking, because perhaps in Europe we shouldn't try to invent or reinvent a new narrative which would refer like of kind of construction of a kind of European identity as we now understand our national identities. But what we could think about, it's really citizenship, the civic virtues, which has been opened up with the Maastricht Treaty. And I think I mentioned before that nobody, in my view, really dares to touch this issue. And to think about the multi-layered citizenship. So, you know, when we are speaking about European policies that affect us all, like it was before, let's say, the example of the referendum, for example, for a new constitution or new treaty, or something what is very important to us. Then we could imagine, for example, the European polity, because it is the issue that doesn't touch perhaps our national feelings. And even if you look at the terminology when we are using it, how we are still affected by it. If you look at the Council of Europe, Council of Europe, which is a much larger organization, and the Convention on Nationality, being the link between the individual and the state. And if you look at the EU terminology, when it talks in the treaties about citizenship, that's not a coincidence, any way that the terms can be used as synonymous, but in my view it is not. It exactly refers, it puts the ground, as I see it, to the civic virtues of the civic citizenship. And perhaps it's according to this, that this could be a starting point that we could theoretically first, or maybe intellectually, and so explore. After all, the EU is very successful, in spite of all other things, projects of integration.
I'd like to add something,
Yeah.
because I agree with you. But you say that there isn't a need for a new narrative, but on the other hand, Enrico, what was the phrase again for the European political foundations? They were supposed to raise interest in the EU or something like that?
European. Awareness to be European.
To be European.
Yeah,
Okay, that makes sense. But you also said something about raising interest in the EU, or people, or having interest, or
Create a European public sphere.
support the EU.
Creating a European public sphere, increase the awareness to be European, and support the activities of Euro parties.
Okay, because I can't recollect the exact phrase, but there was also in your presentation, there was something about support of the EU or interest in the EU, which if you replace EU, for instance, in my instance, with the Kingdom of the Netherlands, the state, it doesn't make any sense. Nobody supports the Kingdom of the Netherlands. Nobody supports or has an interest as a person in the Kingdom of the Netherlands. They feel Dutch, and they feel connected to Dutch politics because if that's where decisions are made that influence their lives. If you talk about the EU in such a formulaic, or what is it, such a formal and etatistic way, of course you're going to scare people away. And in that sense, I think we do need a new narrative, in which we don't talk so much about the EU anymore, but we talk about European affairs.
Yes, but the point is, no, the point.
Narrative. But I don't see this narrative myself as based on the myth, because national narratives, in most of cases, if not all, from 18th or 19th century on, that were one of the basis of the construction of nation states in Europe and then elsewhere, were essentially based on a myth. And I personally believe that Europe or European Union should not base the narrative on a myth.
Values and principles. That is exactly what we call civic and not national identity. And in my opinion, this is the only way to respond to the challenge that is put by our times. Because otherwise, not only our nation states are too negligible in the global world to have a say, not to count as we counted 1 or 2 centuries ago or even half a century ago, but to have a say, to have our voice heard. Even in the World Trade Organization, where Europe speaks with a single powerful voice, there is no persuasiveness on the part of this voice, because it is just the collection of the different demands of the individual nation states.
If I may add, as a classic liberal, economic liberal, what I mentioned is, you can put it in a rhetoric question. Do you think the idea of European citizens will last a minute if the Europe will fail economically? I think the main challenge for Europe is putting the economy at work, and the best advertising for being European citizen is being a citizen of Europe with a really working economy. This is our vision. No, I just making a comment. Yeah.
I will just end this panel that has already run out of time with an anecdote. Last year, in October, we were in Prague. Some of us were there all together. The audience was mostly made by people from the Czech Republic and other Central and Eastern former communist states. There were 3 Western Europeans among the panelists. One was a German liberal, a friend of us now in the board of the European Liberal Forum, Dr. Martens, the Justice Minister of Saxony. Another one was a French, and the third one was myself. We were talking federalism, and the 3 of us were thinking of the United States of America, of the Federal Republic of Germany, of Switzerland. The audience were thinking of the Soviet Union, of former Yugoslavia, of communist Czechoslovakia. So we need a joint vocabulary first, probably, but we need it with a very, very, very important sense of urgency that we are lacking today, it seems to me. Anybody else? No. Thank you very much then. We are 10 minutes out of time.